Welcome. My name is Chibwana, Senior Associate Highlight Foundation, currently working in the Midlands SBU. I'm going to walk you through the Global Trends 2030 presentation. By watching and listening to this presentation, be rest assured that your mind will start formulating pictures of what could transpire starting from today and even for years to come. This presentation was developed from the document Global Trends 2030, written by the National Intelligence Security in the year 2012. I have decided to give the presentation a title, Wakening of Strategic Thinking. The main goal of the presentation is to help people to strategically think about the future, picturing possible outcomes or scenarios that might exist in the organization that is looking at us as Highlight Foundation, even that may actually exist in the country, that is Zimbabwe, Burundi, Lesotho, where we're actually operating as Highlight Foundation, or world at large. The presentation is comprised of 4 components. That is the introduction, mega trends, game changers, and alternatives. The Global 2030 document, it is quite comprehensive, not necessarily to predict the future, but to help us picture possible scenarios, that is the best case scenarios or the worst case scenarios, in order for us to take the precautionary steps. In doing this, there are trends believed to lead the path to the different scenarios, named as the 4 mega trends. They include individual empowerment, diffusion of power, growing nexus among food, water, and energy in conjunction with climate change, and the issues of demographic patterns. We are going to start with the most critical mega trend, that is individual empowerment. It is believed to be the center of all development that will take place, such as growth in developing countries and usage of new innovations in technologies and communications. There are actually results that are expected from individual empowerment, or actually impact of individual empowerment, which comprise like poverty reduction, expanding middle class, and the role of communication technologies. Getting back to poverty reduction, in the event that there is no global crisis or global recession that is going to occur, then the number of those living in extreme poverty is expected to decline as income increases. But if a global recession occurs, then it means there are actually many people are going to remain in extreme poverty. Middle class will actually be expected to rise, especially in countries like China, India, and other Asia. But in developed countries, specifically mentioning the US, middle class is expected to decline. Smartphones are likely to accelerate the empowerment of individuals with introducing capabilities to the developing. Also, impact of individual empowerment will be seen in health, improvement in health. But if in the event that a virulent pandemic occurs, it may mean there will actually be many adverse effects that will take place. But a key point to note, improvement of global health will actually be determined by improvement in health in the African health systems. Religion will also be expected to be at the center of ideological debates, that is shaping the ideologies. Actually, education sector will be the major driver and beneficiary of growing middle class, and economic status will largely depend upon level of education. And the gap between men and women of formal educational attainment is actually expected to reduce. It is actually the retention of women in the workplace will be a key driver of success, boosting economic productivity and mitigating the impacts of Megatrend number 2. It actually focuses on diffusion of power. In terms of issues of diffusion of power, we see that the major thrust, it is on the shift of power structure, moving away from having one dominant power to a scenario of having power in a group of countries. That is, focusing on this pyramid that we have on the slide, it's a pyramid with 3 tiers. The first tier comprising of China and India, second tier having South Africa, Egypt, Indonesia, Iran, Mexico and Turkey, and the third tier having the United States of America. China and India actually at the top. It's actually believed that India is going to grow at a fast rate, actually reaching to a level of where China is currently today. But China is expected to grow at a slow rate, but still maintaining its top position. And these countries in the second tier, they will actually have a second position in terms of the global economy combined, actually. The major determinants of growth or size of these countries will be growth, domestic product, population size, expenditure in military and technology. Enabled by communications technologies, power almost certainly will shift more towards the multifaceted and amorphous networks composed of state and non-state actors, and they will form an influence on many other various issues. Going on the mega trend number 3, which is demographic patterns. Demographics are believed to shape the political and economic structure. A country might actually have a structure of having many aging people or a shrinking base of youthful populations. And there are also issues like migration and urbanization, which also plays a critical role in determining the demographic. If you actually look at the diagram that we have there, developed countries are actually believed by the year 2030 they'll be comprised of aging populations, while there are other countries which are going to experience a shrink in the youthful base. But countries in the equatorial belt of sub-Saharan Africa and Middle East are actually expected to be comprised of large youthful group. And also here, factors that also shape the demographics of countries and cities such as migration, urbanization. In terms of migration, people are expected to move from one city to another, one country to another, to seek greener pastures. Actually, migration is more likely to be globalized as demand for both skilled and unskilled labor soars high. Governmental policies will actually have to capture these issues of migration, or they might be caught unaware. Urban population is expected to grow, and also rapid urbanization is believed to be the center of competitiveness, especially for Asia and Africa. Mega trend number 4 are the growing food, water, and energy nexus. Demand for food, water, and energy is expected to grow, especially considering that population is expected to grow, middle class is expected to grow, and also the existence of rural and urban. The resources will not necessarily be scarce, but like we said, these trends are meant to foster strategic thinking. Private sector and government are supposed to develop strategies to keep the focused strategies. I'm so glad about our funder, that is Econet Wireless. Already they've got a stake in solar, that is Econet Solar, which provides alternative source of power. And this means if more innovations are actually done in this regard, Econet Solar will actually remain more competitive even in the year. Actually, this diagram that we have here, it is actually showing the problems that are going to cause these shortages in terms of food, water, and energy, like climate change, population growth, increase in consumption, growth in urbanization, and increase in biofuel production. The possible outcome from those problems are food shortages, a reversal of decrease in world food prices, decrease in availability of agricultural commodity. But something that is quite interesting, the major solution to all these problems that have actually been identified is the use of new technologies such as fertilizer, franking, and vertical farming. This also means that us as High Life Foundation, for us to remain competitive, for us to make greater impact, we need to put our focus on actually new technologies, new technological. America is actually expected to gain energy independence, of which if it gains its energy independence, it will actually impact on those, especially African countries, that solely depend. Now we're actually getting to what we call game changers. Game changers are factors which are going to contribute to the possible 2030 scenarios, but working in conjunction or in fusion with the mega trends that we've actually highlighted earlier. Starting with the first game changer, that is the crisis-prone global economy. In the under crisis-prone global economy, there will actually be a major shift of focus to East and South from Europe or from the United States of America. As we have seen, is that China and India are actually going to grow significantly in terms of their economies. So the focus will actually be shifted to them. And also there is the probability of another global financial crisis happening, which may actually determine the state of the global economy, or which is the main cause of this may actually be the exit of Greece from the Eurozone. Governance gap. The issue here is on diffusion of power, that is from one dominating country to a group of countries. Non-state actors and state actors, they will have influence in global issues. But the question here will be, what impact would these changes in power have in the world? In terms of governance gap, there are actually drivers that are expected to determine all these issues of changing and of power structure, all these issues of division of power to also state and non-state actors. These factors are health, education, income, and technology. Another game changer, potential for increased conflict. Demographics actually expected to play a very critical role here. Maturing populations in developing countries will foster increased stability. Intrastate conflicts will increase in countries with over-mature populations, with politically dissonant youthful ethnic minority, like for example countries in sub-Saharan Africa. Insufficient resources may also contribute to intrastate conflict. The change in the security system of the US will also be key in determining stability. And also an increase in access to lethal and disruptive technologies play a role. Now, focusing on technologies, I believe this is at the center of all the developments, the center of what 2030 will actually look like. That is the technologies. Technologies actually play a very pivotal role in all sectors, that is social, political, health, and even agriculture. Like in agriculture, you've seen actually that problems will be solved by technological innovations such as fracking, vertical farming, and all. Under politics, about issues of cyber security, under social use of social media by countries actually to gain dominance. Last game changer, the role of the United States. This role is actually, the way that it has been explained is that actually trying to pick whether the United States will remain as the global watchdog in dealing with global matters, or United States whether it might take a passive role in dealing with. Now actually getting to the scenarios that we've been talking about from the beginning of the presentation. We've got 4 possible scenarios that are expected to exist after the fusion of the mega trends and the game changers. The first one being the stored engines, the second one being fusion, the third being the genie or out of the bottle, and the last one, the non-state world. The stored engines. Under the stored engines, they expected to be geopolitical tensions existing, a rise of an pandemic, and where actually the US and Europe actually be passive in assisting poor countries. And also issues of corruption, social unrest, weak financial systems, and poor infrastructure are believed to be contributing in slowing of the growth rates of China and India. IT innovations will be the source of renewal and preserving globalization. I've just decided to incorporate a world map in my presentation, so that at least when you're looking at the world map, you actually see where we are positioned as the country, where we are positioned as Burundi and Lesotho, at the same time where we were not talking about Europe, where Europe is positioned, where America is positioned. As we can see, America is at the top right corner of the world map that I'm currently using. Here is South America, here is the Great Britain, Zimbabwe will lie in this part of Southern Africa, actually there. Now fusion. another possible scenario. This is believed to be the best possible scenario. Its competitiveness is going to come from the security collaboration, which is believed to spur innovation to do with the resource issues and climate change. Collaboration is expected to arise between US and China, being fostered by the Asian crisis, actually providing a broader worldwide cooperation on global issue challenges. Technological innovation will be critical to boost the economical growth, and also global economy is expected to nearly double the role of non-state actors. For now, focusing on us, the African countries where we are actually operating in, Brazilian scientists are actually believed to be involved in green revolution for Africa, and poor states will benefit from the technological advances in food and energy. Of which, in this scenario, I hope that countries like Zimbabwe, Burundi, and Lesotho will actually benefit from this in assisting in curbing the food, energy. African continent, this is where we are. This is our home. And countries in the African continent actually believe this is our family, and most of the poorest countries are actually found in the African countries. And us as Zimbabwe, like highlighted on the world map there, we actually lie here in southern Africa, and Lesotho is actually here close to South Africa there. This scenario, gin out of the bottle. The major thing about this is that inequalities between rich, poor, and poor countries is expected to increase. And also the US will remain a dominant power, attaining an increase due to the and also technologies being seen wielding a lot of power to nations as bioweapons will actually be used, and countries which are mainly oil exporters will be a scenario. Now in the non-state world, this is the most exciting state of the world for me, because private capital and philanthropy are the most important elements, and this is where we lie as Higher Life Foundation actually. The non-state world gained their influence through use of technologies, and as a Higher Life Foundation, we are actually positioning ourselves for greater impact and for there are tools in the non-state world that are actually believed to make the non-state world being competitive and their voice to be heard, such as communication technologies, media. There are also survivors that are expected in the non-state world, those multinational corporations that deal with communication technologies. Like we've seen the Econet Wireless, we're expecting that by year 2030, it will actually be the dominant company in terms of the communication technologies, and other competitors like Vodacom, Cell C, they actually may be having a very small share of the market. The US will gain power by having the ability to bring together a group of influential non-state actors. Urbanization will be the basis of survival for the developing nations. Governments that are for urbanization will thrive. Coming to the end of this presentation, I hope that as you have been listening, that there are many possible scenarios that have already been developed in our minds, scenarios for our organization, for the OVCs that we are currently supporting, even as for the countries that you're operating in. Thank you.